Film Courage, the radio show. We're here with film finance expert Jeff Steele of filmclosings.com.
Hi, everybody.
And Film Closings, Inc. And we had a question come in from Miles Maker, a filmmaker from New York City that we didn't get to during the show. And he asked, Jeff, you're used to working with big budgets and people with proven track records, but what about individuals who have poor credit or no proven track record? Are there venture capitalists out there who are willing to take a chance on these individuals? Does it just depend on how great the project is, or if someone doesn't look good on paper, then basically there's no chance that someone bigger will take a risk on them?
It actually goes both ways, Miles, and hello, Miles, and thank you for all the comments on my site. The venture capitalists per se, as institutional financiers, no, they're not going to take a risk on producers that have little to no credits. I assume that's what you mean by credits and not a FICO credit score. Fortunately, I've never seen a credit check on an indie producer before, so you're in luck. But as far as institutional investors, like venture capitalists and funds and things like that, no, they're generally not going to take a risk on unproven producers because they are financing other people's money, and they have to be responsible, and they have to be good stewards of that money. And if the film flops and the investment goes away, then they need to be able to turn around and look their investors in the eye and say, yes, this was a good investment, and it's hard to say that convincingly if the person is unproven. That said, certainly there are financiers as high net individuals who take chances on independent film on independent producers in the low budget range. You'll find them as individual high net people. You'll find them as investing groups, the proverbial anesthesiologists and dentists and things like that. But there are rich people in every city and every town in the country. LA is pretty tapped out. New York certainly has a lot more. So I would certainly recommend looking outside of LA, New York, Chicago, and focusing on the rest of the country where there is a tremendous deal of wealth and a lot fewer opportunities to invest in, especially in something like film, which is currently considered the best high-risk investment, since real estate is all over the place and the stock market is unpredictable and fine art is also having a problem. So film has kind of, Forrest Gumped or defaulted its way up to the, to the top of the pile. And it's obviously sexier, and when these people are sitting around dinner parties, they would rather tell their friends that they've invested in a film than another strip mall. So, you have to just go out and find these people, and it's a lot of pounding the pavement, a lot of, doing that dog and pony show, which as a producer, I'm sure you're very well aware of.
Well, going back to real estate for a moment, you had put in a blog post that as goes I believe it was the commercial real estate market, so goes film. And I know it stirred up a lot of debate on your site because people were saying, well, with the real estate market, you can kind of accurately predict to some extent how things are going to go with market trends and interest rates and different things. Whereas with film, you don't know what the audience will respond to. So I'm curious where that analogy comes into play, that as goes the real estate market, so goes film.
It comes into play. There's certainly no quantifiable evidence. This is me over 10 to 15 years of just seeing the two move in the same waves coming in and out of Hollywood. And my feeling on that comes from that certainly when you're dealing with larger investors, and again with institutional investors like hedge funds, these kinds of funds and these kinds of investors, even family offices, would much rather write a fewer amount of really big checks than lots of little checks. And that's one of the other reasons that lower budget films aren't as popular with them, because there's a lot of there's a lot of work that goes into bringing together and closing a deal. So you want the return on that to be as big as possible, and you want it to be worth all that time and effort and cost that goes into it. And a smaller project can't really bear those costs, whereas big projects can. Real estate are big projects, and films are big projects when you're getting in excess of 10 million. And that's why I've seen when when capital becomes available in the markets, the people who have that, which again would be like the hedge funds and the equity funds, and you know, they want to deploy it. They don't want it sitting idle, and they like to write bigger checks than smaller checks. And there aren't a lot of places where you can write really big checks in one fell swoop. And real estate happens to be one, and film happens to be the other. And that's the correlation that I've always seen between the two. And in the recent, I would say, 4 to 6 years, I've also seen a lot of real estate developers segue into film finance. Guys like Michael Benaroya and people like that are coming out of the commercial real estate world, and the transactions, how the production loan is financed, is actually very similar, almost identical to a commercial real estate loan. And again, commercial real estate developers, they like film because they're used to the big numbers. They're not frightened by all those commas and zeros. And the financing is structured the same way. You've got an equity piece sitting on the bottom, and you've got a bank sitting on the top. Both of them have tax credits. Some have, in real estate, it's low-income housing credits and green credits and things like that. In film, it's the state tax credits. Obviously, you're not pre-selling foreign territories in a real estate transaction, but the overall structure is very similar. So a lot of these developers can actually use the same people they're using in real estate to put together their film finance packages, and they're used to the structure and dealing with the governments and everybody else, so they kind of feel right at home. So again, that's one of the other correlations. And so if a developer is investing in film, then he's obviously doing well, which means the real estate market is doing well. Therefore, by the trickle-down theory, film ends up doing well as well, because that's where they start deploying their money. And they're not deploying it as an institution like their development company. They're deploying it as an individual, which goes back to my earlier comment about it's the individuals that producers, lower budget producers, would look to, as opposed to the institutions.